Marvel Rivals just announced their 2 new heroes that they're adding to the game, that being Gambit and Rogue, which has a lot of people not only talking about how amazing Gambit's gameplay looks, but also talking about how they're super excited for Rogue and how she's going to play, since her superpower is literally that she steals other people's powers, which sounds like it would completely break the game if they did it lore accurate, where she could just steal any ability she wants to. If she wants to fly, she can just steal it from Storm. If she wants to do a lot of damage, she can steal Iron Fist's punches, and so on and so on. And it really got me wondering what other Marvel heroes or villains could possibly break the game if they were lore accurate with their superpowers. And I'm talking about superpowers that are so broken that it would almost make it impossible to balance it in Marvel Rivals. So I have picked 3 Marvel characters who I would believe would be insanely hard to balance and would honestly break the game if they were lore accurate, and give my personal pitch on how they could potentially play and what their moveset could potentially be if they ever did get added to Marvel Rivals. And there is no better character than Thanos to talk about how broken they would be if they ever got added to Marvel Rivals, since he is the big bad of the Marvel Universe, being able to wipe out half of the universe with just a snap of his fingers, and would be instant locked to every Marvel Rivals game he was in, since who wouldn't want to play as the Mad Titan Thanos? And if they ever did add Thanos to Marvel Rivals, his moveset would of course revolve around the Infinity Stones, and of course he would definitely be a tank, just look how big he is, since after all, the Infinity Stones is what makes him so iconic, and not giving him the Infinity Stones would kind of just be boring and would be missing out on such a huge opportunity to make this character so fun to play. And in my personal opinion, every stone should have its own ability in some way, with his ultimate obviously being the iconic Thanos snap. So I think his primary should obviously be him shooting the Power Stone from his gauntlet, kind of like an Emma beam, but with the Power Stone. And the Space Stone should be used to create a blue shield that kind of looks like a wormhole, since the Space Stone in the MCU creates wormholes and will act as Thanos' shield in this game. And definitely one of Thanos' abilities should be that he creates a clone of himself, just like how he does Infinity War with the Reality Stone. Kind of like the team up Magneto has with Emma, but this time it's not a team up, it's just in Thanos' base kit. And the ability for the Mind Stone, it would be a projectile that once you hit an enemy with, it messes up with their minds and inverts their controls for a couple seconds. I don't really know how long, but maybe like 1 second is good enough. And for the Time Stone having its own ability, it would be cool if it was a team up with Doctor Strange to even use the Time Stone, where once Thanos is teamed up with Doctor Strange, kind of like Tracer from Overwatch, where he reruns time from where he was at a couple of seconds ago, which would be such a cool ability to see, and I feel like it would be pretty broken ability if given to a tank like Thanos. And he definitely should have an ability that allows him to use all of the abilities all at once, for kind of like a hyper beam, kind of like how Iron Man's overdrive works, where Thanos uses all of his stones for one ultra giant beam that just melts enemies in a couple of seconds, but it requires you to burn all of your cooldowns, which would just be Thanos' best way to do insane amount of DPS with the stones. And obviously his ultimate would of course be the ultimate Thanos snap, where he would be able to wipe out the whole entire enemy lobby. And it would definitely be so broken and will be so hard to balance because it would just be an instant win button. So maybe if you were trying to make this ultimate a little more balanced than just being an instant win button, the ultimate would pretty much just snap away half of the enemy team. So that means if they have 4 enemies alive, it only kills 2. If they have 6 enemies alive, it kills 3. And if they only have 2 enemies alive, it only kills 1. So you kind of want to use it pretty early on a team fight when everyone's still alive to get its maximum value. But to use this ability, he needs to charge it kind of like a Scarlet Witch ultimate, but you can do it anywhere on the map. So you can be in spawn and activate this Thanos snap, but of course, like, why would you activate this in spawn? Like, you're nowhere near the battle to even get full use out of this unless you're the only one who died in the team fights. So even though it's kind of an instant win button, it would be hard to pull off mid fights and would have to be done either at the end of the fight or where you're like so far away from the team fight where you could actually pull this off, which I think is a cool way to do the Thanos snap by having the enemy team. But ultimately this ultimate is just so hard to do without making it so broken, since this is the Thanos snap we're talking about, and he is one of the strongest Marvel characters once he gets the Infinity Stones, so it should definitely feel very powerful. But even though Thanos is a villain that would break the game, a hero that would also break the game with how broken he is of course Ghost Rider. Now Ghost Rider is one of the strongest Marvel characters with his Hellflames, Penance Stare, and being strong enough to fight characters like Thanos, so it would be pretty hard to balance this character for Marvel Rivals and for him not to break this game. But if you were to add Ghost Rider into Marvel Rivals, I think the hardest abilities to add to Ghost Rider would of course be his vehicle, which I would probably go with Johnny Blaze, so you know, to give him his motorcycle would be kind of crazy in this game, as well as adding his pen and Sarah would also be pretty hard to not break the game. Since imagine Ghost Rider just pulling up on a motorcycle in Marvel Rivals, that would just be so funny because no one in the game has ever pulled up in a vehicle, and he would definitely be the first and last because I can't even think of another Marvel character who rides a vehicle into battle. battle. And in my opinion, if we had to give him the vehicle, we would just have to make it his ultimate, since it would be pretty hard to do if he was able to do it throughout the game, and it would just become too wacky and too hard to deal with if he was just able to drive around the whole entire map. So to go down into how I would create Ghost Rider's kit for Marvel Rivals, he would obviously be a DPS that gets stronger as the game goes on. Now I know that might sound crazy, but let me explain how the penance stare will work in this game. We all know how the penance stare works. The penance stare is all about inflicting the pain that you have caused onto others onto the person themselves. So Ghost Rider's penance stare will pretty much just be a passive in the game, where when Ghost Rider fights the enemy with the highest damage number on the enemy team, he gets a 5% damage boost when hitting that enemy, as kind of like a penance stare passive. Also, when he attacks his enemy that he has marked with a penance stare through his passive, once he kills this enemy with the most damage, he pretty much just refreshes his cooldown to his flame chains and heals 10% of his health. And once he kills this enemy, the next person with the highest damage in this area will now give Ghost Rider a 5% damage boost when he fights a new highest damage alive character. So Ghost Rider will pretty much be a snowball character when he starts getting kills. So when Ghost Rider fights DPSs like Namor, Punisher, Iron Fist, or Hela, who shred enemies and just get high damage numbers throughout the game, will be easy 1v1s and easy pickings for Ghost Rider, since he will always have a 5% damage boost against these characters, and will pretty much just be a DPS killer, since DPS usually have the highest damage numbers in the game. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, he will have hell chains that will either hook people or be used as mobility tool to pull himself around the map, kind of like Daredevil's hook, where it's not as insane as Bucky hook or as insane as like Spider-Man swing, but it's just good enough to do both. But every time Ghost Rider hits an enemy with a hook and then kills them, his hook will reset, kind of like how Bucky's ultimate resets when he gets his kill. That's how Ghost Rider's hook will work as well. And Ghost Rider's primary fire will be his hell chain slashes that will just be regular slashes, but every time he hits an enemy 3 times with these slashes consecutively, it will apply a burn effect that lasts 2 seconds to really give the feel that he is really burning people with his hell flames. And finally, his ultimate is that he summons his motorcycle and rides into the air and slams down like a phoenix ult, but once he slams down, he leaves a pool of fire wherever he lands that inflicts everyone in the circle with a burning effect, kind of like Torch's flame field, but it does way more damage that would force any enemy to leave the circle, or you will die even if you're being killed through it. But I think this is kind of the best way to incorporate Ghost Rider's motorcycle, since you know it'd be pretty hard to do a vehicle in this game. And I also think I personally cooked with this penance stare passive, because I think it would be pretty hard to do a penance stare where you just grab someone and he looks straight in the eyes, because every grab in this game either is super broken or is just like super useless like Hulk's grab. So I think a penance stare passive just works way better. And the final hero that I will talk about as a Marvel character that would completely break the game if they were ever at it is Marvel Superman, and some would say Superman on steroids, that being the Sentry. And I'll also be including his dark side, the Void, into his moveset, which will be really interesting to incorporate into his moveset. Now Sentry is pretty much the Superman of the Marvel Universe that appeared in the Thunderbolts movie, and I'll be using some of the stuff he does in the Marvel movie and incorporate it into his moveset, since he is so powerful and can really do whatever he wants, and is even strong enough to rival Hulk. So I think he should obviously be a tank that fits him the best, since he is indestructible, and his primary will obviously be his punches. But unlike regular punches like a Hulk or an Iron Fist, his punches will have shock waves, since that's how strong his punches are. So his punches can be used to either brawl and do a lot of damage, since they're both being hit by, you know, the regular punch and the shockwave, so it does kind of a 2-hit damage when you just do one regular punch up close. Or it can be used as projectiles to be used as distance, where the enemy won't be hit with the regular punch, but they will be hit with a projectile that does a little less damage than just brawling. And instead of having a regular shield like a Magneto, Emma, or Strange, he will kind of have like an aura around him that stops damage in a short area. So he will kind of have something similar to Gojo's Infinity, where he doesn't need to stop and put his hands up to put up a shield or to shield himself. Instead, he will always constantly have a shield around him that kind of will act as a 300 extra bonus health. So his total health bar would be 900 HP. And as long as you're in the 7 through 900 bonus health range, you will always have this Infinity Shield active. So to even damage the Sentry's regular health, you have to burn through the first 300 blue health to even hurt his regular health bar. And the shield range won't be too crazy. It's not going to be as big as Magneto's shield. It'll probably be like a mini shield, like kind of like Angela has. But you know, he doesn't have to put his arm up to do it. And the blue shield will of course start regenerating once he hit 500 HP. So the best way to kill the Sentry in Marvel Rivals would be to burst him down with like an Iron Fist or a Punisher, so he can never regain his Infinity Shield. But that's just the shield mechanics and the punching mechanics for this character. Now I really want to get into the movesets that revolve around the Void personality, since that is probably the most interesting part about how I would personally design this version of the Sentry. So how I would incorporate the Void into this kit is that when the Sentry doesn't have his blue health anymore and starts to take a lot of damage to his base health, he starts building up darkness that you can see cover his body. And once he hits 100% of darkness, you will see his eyes glow white and his whole body will turn pitch black, which gives you an indicator that he's ready to take you into the void. And when you see him turn pitch black and his eyes turn white, he gets the ability to bring an enemy into the void for 3 seconds once he hits you with the void projectile. So when you get hit with the void projectile and you're brought into the void, both of the people in the void will not be able to be healed or be damaged by anyone but the person in the void with you. So pretty much when you're the sentry and you bring someone into the void state, you pretty much just get a free 1v1 with anyone you hit with this projectile with. But once you're in the void state, you do not get your blue health anymore. So the max amount of HP you can go into the void state is 700 HP. But however, even though you lose your blue health as the sentry once you enter the void, the enemy doesn't lose any of their abilities. So it's really just straight hands for you, while the enemy person you brought into there has access to their full kit. Obviously, if their cooldowns are burned, their cooldowns are still burned. So that means the person you choose to 1v1, you have to choose pretty wisely. So if you hit Hela with the void projectile from across the map, she will just shoot you from afar because you don't really have any way to close the gap against a Hela, especially if she has the bird to get away. So the best way to use the void is to dive the backline and waste all their cooldowns and then enter the void with them, so they have everything burned and it's just a 1v1 against you two. But obviously you have to have all your darkness built up until that point, so you can't go in with complete full health. So once you close that gap, it's pretty much easy pickings for you once you enter the void. So when you're in the sentry mode, you're more of a traditional tank, but once you enter the void mode, that's when he becomes a more lethal version of himself and can almost be like a pseudo DPS. And finally, his ultimate will be that he brings everyone in the enemy team into the void in kind of this dome radius, kind of like how Daredevil has his dome radius once you look at him. And in this void radius, the sentry is able to fly as fast as Iron Man and even faster than Iron Man, depending on how fast you want to make him. And his punches now have a knockback effect, kind of similar how it is when you get knocked back by Thor or when you get hit with a Jeff Spit. And every time you get hit with one of these punches, you get reduced healing when you're in the void. Since now that the whole entire enemy team could possibly be in the void, they can all heal each other. So that means Sentry kind of needs a little bit extra DPS to kind of really push through the heals. So that's why we're giving him the reduced healing. And this ultimate would kind of be like a power up ultimate, kind of like how Daredevil, Hulk's, and Magic's ultimate work, where they get an amp to their powers. And that's kind of how it works for Sentry, where he's able to fly and his punches get even stronger. And once the ultimate ends, the void goes back into the Sentry and he falls back down to the ground and goes back to his regular Sentry form and heals back to his full health, no matter how much health he had before his ult ended. And finally, the last thing I would give to Sentry would be a team up that he should have with Human Torch. Since Human Torch is known to be as hot as the sun and the Sentry has the powers of a million suns, this team would pretty much give the Sentry the ability to fly without being in his ultimates, which this flight would be pretty tame, not too fast, kind of like an Ultron type of speed flying, where he's able to activate this for a couple of seconds in his base kit without him having to be in the void state, but it would have a 15-second cooldown since this ability would be pretty broken since the Sentry is already pretty strong even without flying in his base kit. But let me know what you guys think of these, character designs, and let me know what Marvel character you personally would think would break the game if they ever got added. There are definitely some characters like Galactus and Silver Surfer who would definitely break the game if they also got added to Marvel Rivals. But these are just 3 Marvel characters I'd like to mention that would not only break the game, but would also be so interesting to see how they would design their movesets. But let me know what moveset you would give to Thanos, Ghost Rider, and the Sentry / the Void, because you could definitely get pretty wacky with these guys' movesets. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys next time. Later, hater. Peace.